am truly, truly delighted to share one of my most favorite authors and human beings with all of you this morning. Penny Peirce has become a bigger and bigger guide in my life, similar to what we just watched on our video with the Tao. She is a sage that leads by example and in a very quiet way, inspiring so many people around the world. Um, she's the author of many, many books. I don't know how many, Penny.
11.
How many?
11.
11. Okay, there we go. I discovered her, I think it was 2018 or 19, through Sharon Warren, who's with us this morning. And the book that we discovered and couldn't put down and designed a whole study group to dive into was called Transparency, looking through our expanded human capacity. And it's just a next level book about how spirituality is evolving in these times. And I think Penny has many, many gifts and wonderful, bio and background that I'm not going to go into. You can read that on her website. But for me, her one of her most special gifts is her ability to articulate and make very complex concepts very understandable. And so in her books, things like, quantum physics and, new biology and all of that, she just can make it flow into something that I can really absorb and understand in a new way. And so uh, she's definitely a gifted writer. And I wanted to, I'll let you guys hear her speak today, and I bet you're going to want to read some of her books too. So today, the topic that we're going to focus on is this book called Freqeuncy. This actually came out a few years ago and has just been re-released with many new additions, and it's fabulous. It weaves in all kinds of concepts and quotes and philosophies and talks about this concept of um, how we have personal vibration and our power with our own personal vibration, and also goes into the collective vibration and this time of transformation. And the piece of it that we're focusing on to start with today is the acceleration of frequency that we are experiencing, but maybe don't understand how to articulate or track it. But it's anyway, so I'm going to have her start there. And Penny, I'll let you jump in. The way we're going to do the format this morning is Penny will do a little introduction, and then we'd like it to be very interactive. We'll dive into a few topics and ask for your experience and feedback and comments to see, what you might add as well to our collective understanding of these worlds we're going to touch into today. So, all right, Penny.
Right.
And,
Thank you, Robin.
okay. Oh, one more thing. I did want to acknowledge Diana. Diana and I brought Penny to the Inside Edge, and that's how we actually started to getting to know Penny better. And I want you to know she was voted by the Inside Edge membership one of the most inspiring speakers of the year twice. So anyway, I wanted to make sure Diana, she might chime in later too. So.
Great. That's great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for inviting me. I love working with Robin and Diana and Sharon. And this is my one of my favorite topics. I mean, I started doing intuitive work very early in my life and did a lot of readings for people early on, I guess as part of my training. But I started noticing this whole thing about frequency and speed and the acceleration year by year by year as I went along, and things were happening to them faster, and more information was coming in, and more pressure to let go of old ways of being and old wounds and that sort of thing. And it just kept going. I thought, well, maybe it's a peak and it will stop, but no, it just kept accelerating. So I've been watching it closely for lots of years, and a lot of the books I've written basically are um, stages I would write one and it would be as much as I knew then about it. And then a whole, 2 years would come by and another section of it would come to pass that I understood a whole new amount of it and then another new amount of it. So I have what's called the transformation series with Simon and Schuster. And there are four main books in it right now that are those stages. And Frequency is the second book in that. And Transparency right now is the last book so far. Anyway, um, so all that to say that this acceleration has been kind of relentless. And in the last few years, it's been extremely intense. I don't know if you've been noticing it, but it's almost like it just took a quantum leap. And um, I always experience it sort of as waves of intensity coming through, or maybe it's pulses from within that are coming through and wanting out. I'm not sure which it is, maybe both. That as they encounter our body and our personality, it sort of is like let go, relax, and let it flow through you and adapt to that new frequency, or else you'll feel very snagged and stuck and blocked and gooey, you know? And so what happens to me is one of these comes through, and I suddenly start thinking something's wrong with me, or I'm exhausted and I can't think. And so I will have to sleep or go out and work in the garden or do something that isn't left-brained. Because if I get in there with my left brain, everything gets very complex, and it makes it worse if I'm trying to figure it out. So moving more to the right brain and intuition and direct experience and somatic information through the body is a good way to integrate the new energies. I imagine most of you, if you're sensitive, which I imagine you're highly sensitive, are feeling these things. And we can talk about this a little bit later. Robin will cue us in about this. But I wanted to talk first a little bit about what I have in the book Frequency are in the very beginning of it are like 9 stages of the transformation process. And basically, it's the description of what happens as these accelerating waves start to affect us. And so let me see where I put that. Oh, here it is. Um, when it first started occurring, it revved us up. It got us excited. And it's almost like the higher the frequency we started to vibrate at, the more of the higher frequency worlds or the non-physical realms we were able to understand or, perceive. So we started to have a greater sense about spirituality and non-physical beings and life after death. And those are some of the early stages of this, where a lot of books were written about that in the early stages and non-physical beings and all of that. But it also got us very excited about all of that. On the other hand, it started loosening up the subconscious mind. It started running energy through everything we had suppressed that we didn't want to think about anymore, old wounds, things from past lives or childhood that were painful, and we had it stuffed. But it was too low a frequency to be able to maintain its invisibility. So the frequencies started to dislodge a lot of those old memories. And one of the first phases of it is that those things started to surface into the conscious mind, but also into ordinary reality, which is part of our conscious mind. So we were seeing things in the news. We were seeing events that were, kind of a plethora of things like school shootings and all that kind of thing, where old subconscious fears were surfacing, both in individuals and collectively. And so it's highly confusing, of course. All this stuff starts showing up again. I thought I took care of that, and got rid of it. Nope, here it is again. So we're living through it all over, but in a new way. Um, and I think part of it too is that these things are frightening. And so the left brain, which is kind of the guardian in a way, decided, okay, we're not doing that now. Let's push it down again. So there was a wave of suppression, resuppression, avoidance, and ways of trying to not have to feel that started happening. And a lot of that, when you're afraid of something, a lot of what happens is that you will feel, um, to avoid feeling terrified, we get angry, and feel frustrated. Something's attacking us, something's bad. I don't want to feel it. And so let's just deflect. So there were so many, many ways that people started deflecting and not letting themselves change. Let's retrench. Let's go back into the old ways. And we're seeing it now, especially in politics and this is kind of worldwide right now. And because this phase is a longish phase. But those of you individually who've been on a spiritual path, you know that you've been clearing. Things have been coming up and you've been learning techniques to let the energy release, to understand why this thing happened in the first place, and to let it go. And then you get clearer and clearer, and things become more easy as time goes along. But in the beginning stages, it's chaotic. Is this making sense to you so far? Yeah. Um, and so the retrenching causes of suppressed emotions, and then of course more of the energy of the acceleration pops more of the stuff up to the surface, and now it's more intense. So now we have to push it down again. And I remember writing about, this is like the big thing with Humvees and, SUVs and power things and lots of coffee and, like anything to fortify our willpower was happening for a while. But eventually you can't keep it down. And so these things have to be dealt with. Some people really are good at keeping it down and they don't want to see it and they have many excuses and it's just the way it is. And that's what I think we're seeing now as this has reached a kind of fever pitch with explosive releases. Um, and of course, when the fears come up, remember, these are things based on good and bad and polarities, you versus them, the inside and the outside world. We have an outside world that is more powerful than we are. So we have to try to either control it or be the victim of it and be nice to it. So we see power, victim dominator patterns arising when this comes up. And then we have to see through that. So part of what goes on is a lot of ego starts showing up. And ego can show up as passive aggressive, victimization, as well as dominating, narcissistic behaviors. And we're seeing that now, that polarity being, extremely highlighted, where the ego is saying, I don't want to die. I'm not going to let go of control. I'm the one, and and so we're getting authoritarian governments around the world and this rise of egos, what would you call it? It's like a clever ploys to forestall its transition into an assistant rather than the boss, if this makes sense. What's happening is that as we clear the fear away, we become aware of our identity changing. I'm not the ego person. I'm not that one that I've defined as all the stuff of my life. I'm a woman, I'm blonde, blah, blah, blah. I did this, I did that, and so I'm good at this, and I'm bad at that because my family, blah, 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 blah. Like the story is starting to shift. And um, in a way, what happens is you start losing interest in telling the story over and over and over and over again. And we start to let go of having all those definitions. But other people are digging into their definitions. So here's part of the polarity is that we're opening up into something much, much larger than our story, which means the soul is taking over as the identity. The left brain is shrinking in its power as the leading force of everything, and the right brain is starting to influence the left brain. So we're having the spiritual, intuitive, direct knowing coming in now and affecting our whole body. Really, we know with our entire body. That's becoming our brain now. It's not just these little. A friend of mine used to call this the walnuts up in front of our brain. It's not just the little, you know, fragile parts of our brain. It's much bigger. Um, so we are going to see this continuing for a while, but it cannot, anything where ego is leading and trying to stay alive and trying to stay in control and doing that, it's outdated. It's not strong enough to maintain itself in the face of the power of this acceleration and higher frequency. It's like the subconscious trying to live in this field of high vibration and maintain itself as, this little protected fortress. And it cannot do it because it's being penetrated all over. And pretty soon it's going to let go. And all those things that we were afraid of, our karma, even that kind of thing, is dissolving. I don't know if you've been feeling this, but a lot of my friends and I really, I can't remember if I have karma. It's like, did I do that before? Was this a problem that I had? It's kind of gone, and I have to make myself remember.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank So Penny, in your book, I was struck by the fact that you said that this is really not just a time of change, but of transformation globally, collectively. And it's because change is happening, but there's this new dimension and
right,
frequency.
right, right. Yeah. And at a certain point in that transformation process, after you've retrenched and let go and gone through this whole thing and really surrendered finally, you get to a point where you're not holding anymore and you suddenly open into, I would call it the soul's reality or the way spirit actually works and the harmony of how connected everything is. And then you start to enter very much onto a highly conscious spiritual path and a path toward higher consciousness that is in harmony with the way things work in spirit. So it's as though spirit enters matter. And we have a very much transformed self and reality and relationships and interconnectivity with other people, but also with nature and the planet and non-physical beings. Everything's here at once. And so part of this, Robin, was that my other book, Leap of Perception, talks a lot about that part of transformation is that our entire perception is shifting.
Mhm.
We're not going to be thinking the same way. And that means that our usual way is linear. We have our here we are, the past is over here, the future's over here, or I have a goal and it's over there, separate from me, and I have to go on this path to get to it, through stages and steps. It's all measurable. And that's the way we think, cause and effect, beginning, middle, end, you know. Um, but now it's almost as though the present moment is like a big ball around us, and I call it spherical perception. And the ball contains, and it's as we expand our frequency, and we expand the ball. Now the ball encompasses the past, not just this lifetime, but all lifetimes. And it encompasses the future. All potentials are in the moment with you, not over there, not outside behind a line that separates us, but right now. That means that we can choose other realities as we put our attention into them. The attention is the factor that materializes ideas, not intention, because intention is futurizing. And that means you've separated from it. But attention is present moment. When you place attention in something, it becomes real. And then the body starts to notice it as real. Then it comes dropping down in frequency and suddenly shows up in the physical realm with you. And that process of materializing is now happening very rapidly. You can think of it and it's almost like it happens right away, unless you doubt or unless you go back into your linear thinking. So part of what I'm seeing now in these enhanced rapid developments is that repercussions of things happen very quickly. If you think negatively or gossip about somebody, boy, it comes around really fast. If you're truly in the love and the, I need this new computer or I need a little more money for this, and say, okay, everybody, we're together. Can you help me with this? Pretty soon, it's just like you ask and you shall receive. I mean, that is the truth. But you don't ask out of greed and you don't ask out of doubt, or you just ask out of like, everybody wants me to win and I want them to win. So why shouldn't we all get what we like and do what we want?
Yeah, wonderful. Maybe this is a good place to pause and see if there's some feedback. Like
Yeah,
what,
I'd be interested to hear if you're experiencing any new kinds of things like this.
yeah. So you're noticing things like Penny's been talking about, where there's a sense of things showing up faster and let's just and if so, I know Tim shared a wonderful example this morning of being in the moment with going back to a past memory and reliving it in a new way and feeling a shift.
Uh-huh.
And maybe there's other examples like that too. So
Yeah.
how are you experiencing this? What are you thinking? What do you have any comment or thought about what Penny's been sharing? I know it's kind of a lot,
It is. Blah.
but yeah. So we'll just open it up for anybody.
Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yes, so you can raise your hand this way or that way. Okay, so I see Melanie.
Well, I've just been struck by many, many things that you've said. And I feel like, oh, I need to get her web address if she's ever speaking.
Yes.
Oh, Melanie. Because I get overwhelmed and I forget that it's all frequency driven and that my connection is powerful and I need to be careful about what I'm up to because I get what I ask for.
Right. Right. And the thing too is that as your frequency goes up, you start to understand more and more of how these higher laws, I guess, work and that they do work and that this is becoming the new normal. It's like, oh, I remember how this is. Right. And it becomes much easier. It's joyful, really, the more we understand it. But when your frequency increases, your perception increases. And and you suddenly just start understanding things. So you have access to things. You have access to so much more information. Almost like the Akashic records are right there and you're in them. You don't have to go find them somewhere. Everything's right there in the moment with you.
Well, I forget that what you say is what you get.
Yeah, that's true.
And you were reminding me to be cautious and intentional with
Mhm.
my words and my thoughts.
Mhm.
And I think having affirmations is I forget that that's so powerful to remind me and my brain of what
Right.
to focus on.
Well, it's also the difference between just having a random thought and I'd like to lose weight, and making a choice where you put all your energy into it and it becomes real, and that's what you mean by intentional. For me, it's like a kind of present moment focus of your all your presence comes into it. And then the body knows you mean it, and everybody knows you mean it, and you get it like that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
This,
thank you for that. It really is. Can you come back next Tuesday and remind me again?
all right. Well, we're going to move on to Thomas has a comment and then Patricia.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Penny. Fascinating. um, I was told a long time ago that by a quirk of astrology or birth, that my personal biography mirrors the social biography. And so I'm listening to you talk about the experience we have personally and how it's reflected out in the world or vice versa. Mm-hmm. And I am deeply immersed in studying literature about the Great Turning and about collapse. Mm-hmm. And I held the question a long time ago, what are the limits to our ability to manifest things? Like, we can, whatever we say, we get and all that. What is the limit on that? And John Lilly wrote a book called The Center of the Cyclone back in 1960 that said there is a limit. There's a limit to our manifestation. And my astrologer taught me that it's a lot easier for me to do some things than others. Mm-hmm. If I'm aligned with my path, they come a lot easier.
Right.
And he said, it's going to be very hard for me to be Miss Montana in 2026. Choose that. That's not a good choice. I'd like to hear you, if you can later, talk about what the limits are about our ability to influence the condition of the earth.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's just talk for a minute about materialization. I just made up that word because manifestation seemed to be losing its meaning for me. But I think one thing is I don't think that a person's individual pattern always reflects the giant pattern in the society, but it does create your personal reality. And what comes into your personal reality, what you notice day by day, minute by minute, those things are part of your inner makeup. As you change, your reality shifts that way, and it becomes clearer and clearer. So when you talk about manifesting or materializing, the limits on that would be almost as you become more aware of universal laws and what, the golden rule, and that there is no negativity in the higher realms, and yet there's a certain limit to what most people can handle in the world, other people maybe. So that's why I think we will not be allowed to make too many technological advances that are detrimental to humanity at this time, that there's a limit to there. But personally, the more open we are and the more, I guess, loving, it's an overused word, but, like that feeling of being one with things, with serving each other and everybody helping each other, and mutually inclusive kind of thing, that you would want to materialize things that are of benefit, that produce joy, that are of that nature, of your own nature. And if there's a limit there, maybe there's a filter that you may want to do medical devices, or you may want to write books that entertain children, or whoever, whatever, but we have our filters from our astrology and numerology and all of those things. So, but I don't think that you have to worry about too much negativity yet, because I don't think it will be allowed energetically yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next we have Patricia.
Thank you. Great talk. I took I attended a retreat, a mindfulness retreat. We had to make a a special poster which I made with different modules. And your words of saying when you said the body is in your brain, in your vault,
Right.
reminded me of me. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah,
So I pull myself of the temple. So he says, my body is my temple, my teacher. I don't know if you can see it.
and classroom. Yes.
Classroom.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
My goodness. I noticed it started to guide me to take decisions, to make decisions. And it really totally made sense.
Yes.
It was
Yeah,
beyond what my mind was saying. And I stuck with it, and it was the wisest decision every time.
right. I think that those choices from soul are deeply comfortable. I mean, with that, there's a difference. If from the left brain, often there's a yes, but, or some other kind of conditionality involved with it. And you can start to feel the difference. The left brain stuff gets almost brittle and tinny, like it just has this texture to it in a way.
Yeah.
And yet, if it comes out of sound knowledge or alignment with universal principles, it works. And it's not a belief, it's just what works. And when you have the left brain and the soul, I mean the right brain, excuse me, I'm getting dyslexic here. Um, it just it's like an intuitive hit that you just don't even question that much anymore. I'm going left, or right, or whatever. Yeah. And that's becoming much more automatic, I think. And part of our higher sensitivity, when frequency goes up, sensitivity goes up of the body. So we're able to sense, I think now, instead of having a lot of emotion, the emotion has evolved into what I call states of being, like sweetness or sincerity. There are generosity and gratitude are states of being. And they involve many other states of being. They're composites of different ways of feeling and sensitivities. But we're becoming highly sensitive to these subtle kinds of states. And then we can identify them and we can shift into them without resistance, without manipulation. And that's one of the fun things. It's like emotions are seeming to dissolve. They're too dense. And they're being replaced by those states that are much more based on a kind of joy and acceptance and love and understanding each other because we're in each other, kind of. And that happens more and more.
Balance.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And Patricia, thank you. All right, Diana.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here, Penny.
Hi.
I loved what you said about asking, and I feel like years ago I heard that, angels can't act unless we ask them. They don't have free will. And I have always found that asking the most profound questions that I can think of in the morning, like how can I magically do this, and how can this happen? That's a frequency. But there's a new frequency that has been addressed recently in some posts that I've seen, that there was a higher frequency than love, that there was a frequency that they didn't understand what it was, and they kept looking for it and testing for it. And they found that the frequency of authenticity was higher than the frequency of love. Is this something that is going around? And do you understand it? Or?
I think it's connected to love, but I don't think it's higher than love. And I think love, when you go up into higher frequencies, it transforms into something that's like belonging or the perfect fit of all things, or something that is that sense that when you leave your body and you go into energy realms, energy can be many places all at the same time. There's no division in time, space, and matter anymore. So love becomes this thing where I really fit in. I belong. I know what I need to know. People think about me. I think about them. It's like no effort. And it's like this kind of sense of ease, joy, grace. So many of these states that I was describing are merged into this experiential thing. And maybe there's no word for it, but we can try to describe it like the elephant, the guy's describing the elephant. But when I go into those states, that's what I feel love turns into. And we're living in it. We don't need it. We don't need love. We need to be in the love with other people and play in it, pretty much.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was perfect.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, Ruth, would you like to share?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm thinking about my sensitivities to so many things, to medications, to chemicals, to the environment. And I feel that what you're describing that's going on in the world is also having its toll on me. I sometimes actually feel as if the cosmos is working on me through my body, and it's not pleasant. That moving to a different dimension is wonderful, when you think about it ideologically, but actually going through it takes a toll. And I wonder whether you have, I think there are many people in our master circle who could qualify as being sensitives. Do you have any words for us for protection or thoughts that we could entertain while we're going through it?
Yeah, I think that's one of the symptoms. I'll go through some of the other symptoms in a minute, but I think that high levels of sensitivity and empathy are one of the things that are coming because of the dissolution of boundaries around us. We're not holding our personal story, we're not holding our identity as this separate thing, and we're opening up to allow our sense of self to be so much bigger, and that would include bacteria, or everybody, everything. So I think that when we start to have oversensitivity to things like, the ingredients in medicines or foods or whatever, and pesticides and all that, it may be coming from past experiences that you're trying to clear that have to do with feeling that you were endangered. And that as you allow yourself to, hey, I'm the creator of this reality, and I can sense that I don't resonate with this frequency. So what do I resonate with? And let's find the foods, let's find the way of life, the living that is healthy and joyful for you, that lets you feel the way you like to feel. And release all the old patterns of limitation that where you felt you had to protect yourself, because there is no protection anymore. It's more about as you join with all things and encompass all things, you become friends with it all. Or you allow. There are people who are very, very confused and evil in the world, and yet they're in us too. All we can do is hold energy and spread it through the whole field at a certain frequency that we like hit our tuning fork, and send a vibration out, and then let them feel it if they can feel it. So I think part of this too is that we're doing a lot of healing of ourselves and others simply by working with the field of energy that we live within and that we actually are. By shifting the frequency of the field up to its level and letting yourself shift to that level, you set the example for others. And I would bet that you would have very rapid healing of a lot of these things that have been bothering you. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does make sense. I think what you said about that it's connected with fears too, because when you said there's no negativity, but when you look at the world scenario right now of what's happening, it's hard not to see negative, in terms of death, war, famine, destruction. It's
Right.
how do you not call it what it is and make it into something that's perfect?
It it's a hard thing, and this is like also Robin asked a question about how do we deal with people who are at lower frequencies than we are. And it's not an intellectual judgmental thing at all. But there are people who are still working out karma around war, around violence and things. And so they may be going through it again in order to heal it in themselves. And that doesn't mean we condone it at all, you know, but we can't go rescuing people. But I think the way we do it is through a field, by changing the field and tuning in on those populations that are having these problems right now and making it feel safe around them energetically so that they can feel who they really are. Because their true soul self can change their frequency easily enough, and they'll be invisible to the ICE agents or whoever's, trying to persecute or hurt them. You can be invisible or visible. You can have the experiences or escape the experiences. It depends on how you're holding your own energy.
I know in homeopathic medicine, very often they tell you you have to get a lot worse before you can get better. And as you're going through the worst stage, you're thinking to yourself, how am I getting better? But you actually have to go through that before it.
Right. It's like touch base and then, run on.
Right. So it's a constant thing. It's not something you just accept a way of looking at something and then it happens. It's a constant vigilance of your thoughts of how do you
Right.
position yourself.
So that you don't make a rule out of the negativity. That's the way it is. That we don't want to do that.
I think we have time for one more.
Thank you. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you, Ruth. It was a great question. Tim.
Yes, thank you so much. Father Gregory Boyle, who started Homeboys Industry, and they brought gang members, criminals. He uses the term cherished belonging, and you were talking about the evolution of love. That term seemed to fit really well.
Right. It
And,
does.
Einstein once said, I really wonder if the universe is friendly. And when you look out at the relative world, it doesn't look friendly. And even if you look at nature, the way things are created and destroyed and animals eating each other, it doesn't look friendly. But the Buddhists say that at the deepest heart of it all, when you get rid of when the discursive mind stops, that at the base is loving kindness, compassion, joy, wisdom. And they also say that the five poisons are turned into the five wisdoms to the five Buddha families. So there seems to be what they call a fourth time, which is beyond the past, present, and future, in which everything is right now, always right now, and there's entrainment. So what you do now changes not only the past, but the future, because there's only the fourth time. And so this entrainment affects everything. And the higher the frequency goes, like one avatar can pull up 1 million lower frequency energies. So, this is just an amazing time. It feels as though we are striving to climb, but the divine is coming down on top of us at the same time. It's like what you call the absolute is coming down and providing more wisdom and more incredible power. And so what you're saying just resonates completely with what scientists are saying. It's just like all these people are waking up and seeing this almost at the same time. So thank you for everything you've shared.
Well, thank you for sharing that because that's so true about at the core, or even if you go inside matter all the way in, there it is, spirit. those principles, that state of being, it's right there inside everything. And I think now, because of the frequency of the physical expanding so much, that we're able to sense that spirit is in matter, that our soul is in our personality. It's not out there somewhere, like a balloon. It's like in us. And, this is becoming more normal. What I'd like to do is go through these kind of 9 things I added onto the frequency book.
We're almost out of time already.
You have 3 minutes. Do you think you could come back?
Let me just read them to you real quickly, and we don't have to talk.
3 minutes? Okay.
Yeah. The first thing is that when frequency increases and you align, attune, and resonate, you will sense that you are the soul. There's a whole recognition at that point that you're not just your personality or your brain, but you are the soul. The second thing is that linear thinking becomes much too slow. And this is where we shift into that spherical perception that I spoke about. Like when you start thinking how fast something's going to happen and it's too linear, it's like, that's old. And the third thing, a high frequency mind lets you reach and deeply know the great wisdom of the soul as though it's normal. Number 4, excuse me, high frequency consciousness lets you clear blockages without struggle, resistance, or force. You see what's incomplete and you complete it so you can become transparent. Number 5, with high frequency energy and consciousness, your identity shifts. So you no longer hold the story. You let go. And what are you? I always think I'm kind of like this white hole. This stuff is coming through. And it's new. And yet the story's all there. It was happening all the way along. Number 6 is when frequency increases, you experience time changes. And this is a huge thing right now. A lot of people are talking about shifting into new timelines. Having, like, if something was going to take you this amount of time to reach your goal, suddenly something happens and you're like right there. And your life is happening at a speedier, more efficient level. And I'm hearing this from a lot of people right now. Number 7, as you and others become your high frequency self, you experience what I call the convening, which means that people on your wavelength start showing up in your field and you in theirs. Similar frequency, similar wavelength, and people materialize on that frequency. And that means that new projects can be started, new group mind can start happening, and creativity can come through in a much more enhanced and accurate and evolutionary way. Number 8, with high frequency energy and consciousness, you develop more supernatural skills. So things like precognition, all kinds of things that we used to think only special people had are happening to you. Dreaming, lucid dreaming, all kinds of things that are going to make you much more perceptive of all times and dimensions. Number 9, then finally, as your frequency increases, you feel, hear, see, and communicate with non-physical beings. You understand the inner dynamics of people, situations, timelines, and potentialities. So, UFO people, and non-physical beings and dead people, I mean, it's like they're not gone. They're right there. And if you just shift your frequency a little, you can talk to them. No, nothing's gone. Nothing's ever gone. Your own past lives are there, So these are just a few of the things that are starting to surface.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you so much.
That whole list is in the first chapter of this book. And that's just the beginning of a deeper dive into some of these concepts that are wonderful, including home frequency and how to use it and how to deal with frequencies with others as you evolve. So I know we're out of time, but I will follow up with an email with links and ways you can connect with Penny and her materials, and her website has tons of great resource. So help me
Thank you
thank
so much,
Penny very
Penny.
much for being here.
It was really my pleasure.
Come back.
Truly. I'd
back.
love to come back
I'm
anytime.
sure you have a lot more to share. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go to the business